Alright, hello everyone and welcome to AEW Discussion. I'm your host and AEW enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode I'm going to be discussing Dynamite January 25th, 2023 episode. And this was a special episode of Dynamite, and what made it so special was AEW being able to pay tribute to the late great Jay Briscoe, and not only do that with just a video package, but also his brother Mark Briscoe would go one-on-one with Jay Lethal as well too. So absolutely incredible that this was all put together. Wasn't the only thing going on in the show, but it definitely was the main thing on the show. And with that, we'll go ahead and get right into the action of the show, starting with Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara versus Ricky Starks in Action and Andretti. So this was a solid opener for the show with some great action for the participants, and it concluded in a manner that made sense. Jericho shoved Garcia to a supporting role, having him learn underneath Guevara. Garcia was criticized for losing to Andretti on Rampage, but he ended up being a difference maker here in this match as he rocked Andretti with Floyd, the baseball bat, allowing the Spanish guy to pick up the fall. So the win here broke the losing streak from the JAS, more specifically Jericho had been on a bit of a losing streak, losing matches to Starks and Andretti. And you know, even Starks kind of got protected in defeat, and he's been red hot as of late. Certainly was the most over guy in this match, and I think he's shown himself to be a star. Also gotta give some credit to Andretti. He doesn't quite have the experience of the guys he was in the ring with, but he rarely appeared overwhelmed. TNT Championship match, Darby Allin versus Buddy Matthews. So Allin has developed into one of the constants when it comes to consistently great in-ring outputs. Not everyone will be a fan of his style, but you can't deny his quality of work. He has mastered the formula and knows how to put on an effective big guy versus little guy matchup, and it showed here. This was the first opportunity in quite some time for Matthews to perform in a singles match setting, and he certainly excelled. It was a bit of a throwback to his days in the Cruiserweight division, where he would put on, routinely put on a show with guys like Cedric Alexander and Mustafa Ali. The post-match promo from Samoa Joe suggests that the feud with Allin is not over, but given the fact that these two have worked consecutive matches against each other not that long ago, that's probably not a feud that AEW should have gone back to, but nonetheless, they did it anyway. And next week there will be a no-holds-barred match between the two for the TNT title. So again, probably unnecessary match, probably don't need to happen. Allin's probably going to retain, which will make it even more pointless, but I mean, in a way, I guess it does kind of make sense for Samoa Joe to want to avenge that loss, but hopefully after that match next week, both parties can move on. Bryan Danielson versus The Machine, Brian Cage, and after the match, Danielson got the win. The Machine would beat down Danielson before MJF would march to the ring and grab a steel chair. Cage would then use that chair, wrap it around Danielson's shoulder and send him into the steel post, and before the two of them could do much more damage, Takeshita would make the save and send the world champion running and fending off Cage as well. Not only did this give Danielson an injury to overcome if he wants to win the world title, or on his journey to Revolution to win the world title, but it also set the stage for a potential showdown between Takeshita and MJF, and that is a money matchup. You think about the issues between these two? Well, it started with MJF's promo on the young Japanese competitor that was certainly quite insulting, as all MJF promos are, or generally can be, and the issues continued here, and rather than letting that previous interaction go to waste, Tony Khan has instead used that as an opportunity to position Takeshita as a potential MJF opponent. Now, would that be before Revolution or after Revolution? I don't know. Probably before, because I don't know how much sense it makes to wait on something like that. Granted, I know Takeshita versus MJF before Revolution, kind of gives away who's winning that match, but I mean, even if there wasn't that Danielson versus MJF match looming over it, it's still, it's still kind of obvious who's going to win that match, but it still would be a great matchup to do. So it'll be certainly interesting to see when that match happens. And if there was certainly one question coming out of this segment, it is the Blackpool Combat Club. Wheeler Yuta and Claudio Castagnoli. They were nowhere to be found and did not come to the aid of their friend. Now, John Moxley was excused, but those two were not. Now, if anything comes of that remains to be seen, but it's difficult to find the inclusion of CashNet here as an ally, potential protege of Danielson. As for the match, it was fun and showed off the talents of the underutilized Cage. Now, back to that BCC point, I will admit Danielson has been kind of going at it alone recently with MJF, so I guess in a way it would make sense, but I feel like even if he has been going at it alone still, why wouldn't you come out to help him? Anyway, moving on from that to Toni Storm versus Ruby Soho. This was supposed to be a triple threat with Dr. Britt Baker, but instead she made a cameo appearance due to injury. So it seems like AEW is setting up a women that have come into AEW from other company, from the outside, or come in from outside AEW versus female superstars who are originally with AEWs or AEW originals. That seems to be some sort of like matchup AEW setting up, and it certainly has some appeal, and thus far it's played out well. Yeah, the turn for Storm and Saraya was abrupt, but it wasn't. But if you think about how fans have been reacting, probably was in line with it, and it's never really a good idea to try to resist initial fan reaction, because that just makes everything frustrating for the performers and just kind of frustrating for the fans as well. Soho's performer for the match did a nice job of establishing motivations, but probably could have used a little bit more added to it. Maybe a turn tease or a reminder from Baker that she came from the same place as Saraya and Storm. Interesting too that Saraya came out and cost Storm the match and helped Soho pick up the win given their history, but clearly there's a bigger picture at play. There are enough moving pieces and story threads to do something fun with this storyline. As for Soho and Storm, solid match with some physicality from Storm, and it'd be great to see what these two could do on a pay-per-view stage without the interruption of a commercial break. And then to get to the main event of the show, Mark Briscoe versus Jay Lethal. And pro wrestling is sometimes at its best when it's at its most real, and there's nothing more real than what took place in the main event of Wednesday's Dynamite, a match in honor of the late great Jay Briscoe featuring his brother Mark, squaring off with their friend Jay Lethal. Emotions were high as two of the cornerstones of Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor paid homage to one of the more influential and beloved wrestlers of his time in Ring of Honor. The action was great, the crowd receptive and appreciative of it all, but give credit to Mark Briscoe and what he accomplished here. 8 days after advising his brother, a man who he shared both his personal and professional life with, he not only stepped foot in the squared circle, but delivered quite the showing against a guy in Lethal who understandably was emotional from the get-go. It was also nice too how Lethal kind of dropped the character act to it just kind of went in there and just kind of wrestled as Jay Lethal, so that was very nice to see. Didn't really play into any of his character stuff, which he didn't need to. The mental toughness on the part of both of those guys to go through with this match, fight through all the heartbreak and sadness to do what they did on national TV. It's all inspiring. It's awesome to see. Really just great stuff from the play-by-play of a match like this. Probably insignificant, but certainly nice to see they included the Ring of Honor team in this one. But Briscoe certainly won in the most fitting way. His brother's famed Jay Driver. Mark standing tall with the Ring of Honor World Tag Team title belts that his brother held on 13 occasions. Fitting conclusion to the night, and one of those rare moments that will certainly stand the test of time. This was a banner night for AEW. Shout out to Tony Khan and his team and every wrestler who filled that screen in the closing moments of the broadcast, as they should be proud of themselves, but most of all for Mark for carrying on his brother's legacy in the most difficult of times. So yeah, shout out to Mark for going through with this. Shout out to Jay Lethal as well, their participation in this. Shout out to Tony Khan especially. He fought very hard behind the scenes to make this happen, and that's a very good thing. Tony Khan, I will admit, he does a great job taking care of his guys and his guys and his girls in his company. So it was very awesome to see he was able to make this happen. I'm so glad it was. We don't need to talk about what happened last week. Sure, Warner Brothers didn't want this to happen initially, but I'm glad that, again, Tony Khan was able to fight behind the scenes to make this happen. This was a nice little tribute to the guy, and there's nothing more really to say to that. We'll just go ahead and wrap up this episode of AEW Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.